Hi everybody, today's lesson is about the Constitution. We're doing this lesson today because it's actually Constitution Day. Our objectives today are that you will understand what the United States Constitution is and understand how it functions. Our standards that we're going to be focusing on are 5.1.C.A, point C, point B, point C, point C, and point C, point D. Two of our essential questions that we're going to be focusing on are, why is government necessary, and why is the United States Constitution necessary? Before we go on too much further, what exactly is a constitution? The Constitution is a document that gives the rules for how a government should run. So why do we have a constitution now that we know what it is? We have a constitution to establish our government. We also have a constitution to explain who has what powers. Do they belong to the states or the federal government? And we also have a constitution to protect our natural rights. Constitution Day is celebrated on September 17th because on September 17th, 1787, the framers of the Constitution actually signed the document. Now, this document is important because it essentially establishes what our government is, but it wasn't our first government. Previous to this, we had the Articles of Confederation, which formed a weak government in the United States. So these framers came together to figure out how they could make a stronger government. And some of the things that they needed to keep in mind were how much power the central government should have, how many representatives each state should have, and how exactly those representatives should be elected. So this process lasted for several months and ultimately is a great example of how these men came together and formed a compromise to give us a stronger government. We're going to be spending most of the school year going over different parts of the Constitution, but let's just kind of go over some of the basics first. So here's a basic chart that we're going to look at, and we'll kind of piece this out in the next few slides. The preamble of the Constitution is basically the opening statement, and it tells why the Constitution was created and what the Constitution will do. So when you think about writing a paragraph, you're letting people know what you're writing about in that first sentence. Same thing with the preamble. The Constitution is divided into 7 articles, so let's go over what each article means. Article 1 is the establishment of the lawmaking body of our government, Congress. Now, Congress is divided into the Senate and the House of Representatives. Congress is really what makes our government a representative government, because we as citizens are electing the people to go to Congress and represent us when they're making their laws. Article 2 creates the executive branch, and the executive branch is more than just the office of the president. It's not only the president, but it's the vice president, the cabinet, and many members of the government that work underneath of those people. And it's also an explanation of how the president is selected, what powers he or she has, and what happens if they misbehave while in office. Now, Article 3 sets up the judicial branch, basically our court system. Now, it only actually created the Supreme Court. Any other court was established by Congress. Article 4 is where the states get their powers. Not all of the powers in our government belong to the central government. The states have powers too, and so this essentially explains what those powers are. Now, Article 5 of the Constitution explains how the Constitution can be changed in the form of amendments. The Constitution is what's considered a living document. It can be changed over the course of time, and the way it's changed is by amending it, making those changes in the form of amendments. Over the years, we've only had 27 amendments, and 10 of those came shortly after the Constitution was created, and that's what's known as the Bill of Rights. Article 6 of the Constitution explains that the Constitution and the federal laws, those from the central government, are higher than state and local laws. This means that state laws and local laws have to agree with what the Constitution says. Finally, Article 7 of the Constitution really explains the process for how the Constitution would be approved by the states.